I want to first turn to Sari Hanafi. He's Director, Center for Arab and Middle Eastern Studies, American University of Beirut. I turn to him because Beirut has become the epicenter of the latest conflict that Israel is waging at the moment against Hezbollah. More bombings today, more reports of potentially even the successor of Hassan Nasrallah having been assassinated. Mr. Hanafi, the fact is, Israel conducting a series of strikes on what they are calling the Hezbollah's southern Beirut strongholds. There are reports that Israeli drones have dropped bombs in Beirut. Can you give us a sense of what is the situation on the ground where you are?
Thank you for your question. Just I will fix some of the vocabulary. What has been done in the last 2 weeks is a rather a genocidal war against Lebanon. So it's not targeting Hezbollah stronghold only. It's really killing so much civilians. I should bring this example. In Saida last week, in order to kill one Hezbollah leader, and it's not important leader, just a local leader in Saida, this is the second city of Lebanon, they killed 72 civilians and injured 102 civilians. So you see, this is really, it's not striking against Hezbollah. It's a indiscriminate attack between competent and non-competent. The situation in the last 2 weeks, we have 1,972, according to the Lebanese Ministry of Health, killed, and around 5,000 injured. So it's really is a scale of massacres, and I would say they are the Israeli is going to do the same thing what they did in Gaza, is raising the whole Gaza Strip, and they are ready to do it here.
You know, you're expressing the fear that Israel could be doing to Lebanese cities what you claim they've done to Gaza already. Israel is issuing alerts to citizens to evacuate from southern Lebanon. They are saying Hezbollah is using citizens as human shields for protection. How are people then reacting to these alerts from Israel?
Yeah, you know, let's us also refresh our memory what happened in Gaza. So they ask people to move from place to place, and then they bombard them in the other place. So this is what is going on also in Lebanon. So yes, they asked to evacuate almost 45 localities in the south, and many, if you like, the whole quarter of the Al-Dahia, which is a suburb of the southern suburb of Beirut. It's really is a huge scale. This is why in Lebanon today you have 1,200,000 displaced. It means that the quarter of the population are today displaced in Lebanon.
But what is the public mood towards Hezbollah? Because there are sections of Lebanese society who have long felt Hezbollah has hijacked the Lebanese state through its military stand. Do they want to avoid this escalation? Are the people expressing really support for Hezbollah at all?
Yeah, I mean, Lebanese society is divided society, exactly like India, like UK, like France, is a divided society. There are some who are for justice, because we should remember that according to the international community, Palestinian territories, West Bank and Gaza, is illegally occupied. So society divided between those who are in favor of an ethical engagement against the settler, colonial and apartheid regime in Israel, and those who are against. So yes, in this meaning, it is divided society.
You're saying it's a divided society. It's a good point on which I want to bring in Jeremy Ishashop, because an Israeli perspective seems to suggest that Hezbollah is a terrorist group that needs to be eliminated. You've got voices in Lebanon saying the mood on the ground is much more divided. and of course the fears that civilians are losing their lives as Israel prosecutes the war, first in Gaza, now in Lebanon. Your response, is Israel in a way now determined to take this to a finality, and if so, what is that?
Israel is determined to defend its national security. And you mentioned just before the so-called supreme leader of Iran, Khamenei, who addressed his nation and praised the October 7th massacre by Hamas of Israeli civilians, men, women, children, babies, burned, raped, massacred. And this was praised by the leader of a so-called civilized country that actually has been backing Hezbollah, who immediately after October 7th attacked Israel with hundreds of rockets. Since then, they've displaced over tens of thousands of Israeli citizens from the northern city. They're a terrorist organization, Hezbollah, that has hijacked the whole of Lebanon. And I'm surprised that Mr. Hanafi neglected to mention how his whole country, Lebanon, has been undermined by Hezbollah, by this terrorist organization, which has stored up thousands and hundreds of thousands of missiles in civilian areas, in civilian villages in the south. And they expect Israel just to accept 100 rockets, 300 rockets a day without having any response. I can't imagine what India would do if any one of their neighbors was shelling them with their territory with hundreds of rockets a day. Mm-hmm. And I think it's time to get real and time to understand that this terrorism has to end. And the war in Gaza, it was the Iranian foreign minister visited Beirut today and said that the war in Lebanon will only cease once the war in Gaza should end. And so I think that it's about time that, look, Israel will have to respond to the attack by Iran of 181 ballistic missiles that were launched against Israel 2 or 3 nights ago. And it's something that cannot be left unanswered.
So we're not looking for
escalation, but we can not tolerate the fact that so many ballistic missiles were targeted on Israel by Iran for no reason whatsoever.
So you're very clear. Let me get this very clear. You're very clear that Iran's act of the ballistic missiles was provocative. You're very clear that Khamenei's speech, which you believe defended what happened on October 7th with Hamas, is provocative, and therefore you see a certain inevitability of Israel escalating this conflict with Iran. Am I clear?
I would say it in a different way. Israel will, in all likelihood, respond to the brazen attack of 181 ballistic missiles fired against our civilian cities and other installations. So, yes, there will be a response. Will there be an escalation? Will depend on how far Iran wants to take this. And Iran has been escalating this conflict, let's not forget, since October 7th and even before then. We've also had attacks from the Houthis in Yemen, who are financed by Iran. We've also had an attack which killed 2 soldiers in Israel today from Iraq. Again, militias financed and pushed by Iran. So yes, Israel is going to respond to this in a very, I hope, decisive way. Are we going to escalate? That remains to be seen, but we will defend our national security.
Okay, those are strong words. Andrew Latham, Professor International Relations and Political Theory at Macalester College, United States. You're listening to these voices coming in both from the Arab world as well as from Israel. Is the United States unwilling or powerless to really stop this conflict from escalating, in your view?
Yes, the short answer to the question is yes. This current administration is not really in a position to exercise much influence on the Israeli government's response, with one exception. I think drawing a red line around a retaliatory, not preemptive, retaliatory response that includes Iranian nuclear facilities, I think that's off the table. There are basically 2 schools of thought in Israel and in the U.S. when it comes to what Israel should do to respond to this 181 ballistic missiles being fired, one of which is tit for tat, respond in kind. Nominally, at least, those missiles were targeted at military facilities. They weren't very effective. In fact, they were incredibly ineffective. And so Israel might respond by attacking military facilities in Iran. They would be much more effective. The Iranian Air Force and air defense capabilities are so limited as to be laughable. Israel has entire air supremacy and could do whatever it wants. That's the minimal response. The maximal response, which is a little more frightening and has a great deal of support in Israel and in the Republican Party in the United States, is that Israel should go way beyond that. Israel should, in fact, even if you take the nuclear facilities off the table, 83% of the revenues that the Tehran government spends on domestic things, but also supporting its proxies in the region, are derived from oil. And oil is exported primarily through two ports. And Israel has demonstrated the ability, because it attacked the Houthi port, an ability to strike long range. Israel could shut down the Iranian economy tomorrow and fracture what is already a very fragile regime. And in so doing, would cripple the Houthis, Iran's proxies in Syria and Iraq. We don't need to worry about Hamas anymore. That's already been the military arm destroyed anyway. And Hezbollah is about to be destroyed, military arm anyway. Now, what that would mean if Israel were to do that, that would probably accelerate the Tehran regime's pursuit of nuclear weapons. It's only about 6 weeks away from having demonstrated a nuclear capability, then it has to weaponize and whatnot. So it really, and when I'm reading the tea leaves and listening to Prime Minister Netanyahu, I'm beginning to think that it's the latter option that's really on the table, that this response is not going to be proportional, quote unquote. It's going to be regime change.
Okay, you're saying the possibility of regime change. Casey Singh, do you want to respond to what you're just hearing from our American guest, suggesting that Israel may well take a maximalist response towards Iran to try and cripple Iran economically, possibly target its oil installations as a retaliatory measure? Do you think that is possible?
Well, I largely agree with that. That's true. That's exactly what Prime Minister Netanyahu said. It's been hinted so far. This is probably one of the options which was on the table. But the Prime Minister left us in no doubt, because he said the people of Iran need to be liberated. But that would be a serious mistake, because there's been a meeting in Doha where all the GCC countries have met. Foreign ministers of two countries, Qatar and Oman, have openly come out against Israel. Probably the UAE are the most frightened of Iran, and they are still sticking to the Abraham Accords. Saudis never joined the Abraham Accords, and their foreign minister also met very warmly the Iranian leader. And therefore, they are opting out of it. They are saying, we'll be neutral. You're not getting involved, because Iranians have hinted that if you take our oil facilities out, then we will go after the oil facilities of your allies. And Americans have also got military bases in Qatar, in UAE, and so on and so forth. All those come on the table. At the very least, Iran can stop the export of oil by blocking the Strait of Hormuz. They control the northern flank of that. And it's very easy they've done it during the Iran-Iraq war. They attempted it. But certainly they can reduce the amount of oil flowing through, even if they don't attack the oil facilities of the Gulf countries. But one can see the nervousness in the GCC countries, and that's why they've announced. Now, the question is, how does Israel attack? It has to overfly an Arab country. It has to refuel in the air. That leaves only Jordan out. Now, would Jordan be joining in this? So there is don't forget that there is also the Arab street. Autocratic Arab leaders may go along, may not like Israel, may go along with the Americans, may want Iran to be punished.
Are you saying that if Israel takes a maximalist approach towards Iran by targeting their oil installations, the Arab street could well come out and force their regimes also, even the moderate regimes, to support Iran? Is that what you're suggesting?
Not the Emirates. It can happen in Bahrain. It can happen in Jordan. And as I said, Qatar and Oman, in any case, have opted out. They've taken a very strong position against Israel. But even the Saudis will not want, because they have a large population base. They will not join the Abraham Accords. So there will be a division. There won't be a unity in the GCC to sit out and let Israel do whatever they want vis-a-vis Iran. I think that is very clear. And that is why that's why the Americans will exert their most. But let me add one thing. The problem is President Biden. Not only is he lame duck, but he has a history of friendship with Netanyahu. Even when President Obama was there, as vice president, he was much warmer. Obama was pushing Netanyahu. He was forcing him, do not build more settlements. But Mr. Biden, even as vice president, has an old equation with Prime Minister Netanyahu from the time he was senator and Prime Minister Netanyahu was Israeli ambassador to the UN. So there is that, combined with being a lame duck, combined with a degree of, not being all there. So that is the unfortunate thing. And last point, Rajdeep, one last point. I think what Prime Minister Netanyahu wants is for Trump to be elected. He would like more chaos in the Gulf, because that may well help Trump in the American election.